Go with yours one more time. Do 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, cool. I think we're good. Okay, I gave you a water. Okay. I'll play the theme song just so you can hear it.
Okay.
We can talk over it. I put it in afterwards. This is my best friend's from college sister singing.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. She's from South Africa. So I put that in a post so we don't have to like start now. And again, like this can go as long.
Yeah, how long are they?
Like everything I cut down to hold on, I just want to turn up my headphones a little bit. Everything I cut down to like 30. Was that my headphones or your headphones?
My headphones.
Okay, talk. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Is that better for you?
You turn up a little bit.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, that's good.
Hello. Oh, now I understand why I was struggling with your audio.
Is it better?
Yeah, because my headphones were really down low. I've done a 3-hour interview and cut it down to 45 minutes. I mean, I won't post something unless it's between 30 and an hour. So it doesn't matter how long the interview goes. It's just about the
content.
Yeah, because then I just cut the parts that don't, play into the story well.
Yeah.
And feel free to, and it's okay if you slip up with names if you're like, oh, I shouldn't say that person. Like, again, I'm editing this. Okay. And you can change names. You could even change names of schools or names of places, whatever you feel comfortable with. Like, that's really the biggest thing.
I mean, I'm happy to acknowledge we went to high school together.
Okay. So we went to high school together.
We did, yes. Many moons ago at this point, it feels like.
I would say we were like acquaintances. We weren't friends. We weren't close friends. We were friendly.
I think the kind of high school we went to, everyone was like friendly enough. It was 80 people in our grade, so everyone knew each other. Everyone kind of knew each other's. Or am I allowed to curse?
Yes. Oh my God. Of course.
Everyone knew each other's shit to an extent, but also not to an extent.
Also not, because that's why we're sitting here.
But yeah, Molly and I had a few classes together. We knew each other.
We had
socially.
actually done a summer program.
Oh,
that's how
I forgot about
I'll probably
that.
cut this part because it's irrelevant. But that is how I know you.
Was that with Laura?
Geometry.
Geometry with Christina Rosado.
She was amazing. Oh, I'm actually sad I fell out of touch with her. But yeah, so we went to an all-girls private
school.
80 girls in our class. We were one of the largest classes ever. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it was 81 actually.
Okay. So we can kill off a few.
So just set the scene. It was a lot of girls together.
A lot of girls, a lot of drama.
A lot of money.
And I'll just say what I thought of you, because what we're going to talk about today, I had no clue was going on with you. I thought you were just sweet. You weren't popular. You weren't the bottom of the barrel, You were kind of somewhere in the middle is how I remember it. I'm so interested in what you think of hearing this. I remember you like wanting to maybe be in the fast crowd. I don't know. Correct me.
I mean, high school for me, there was just a lot going on, and high school was honestly the lowest of my priorities. I think
so interesting.
I think I was friendly with everyone and didn't want any enemies, but I was like so afraid because there was so much going on in my life to be close with anyone that I just kind of stuck to myself. And when there were teachers around, I pretended to be more social because I didn't want anyone to worry. But at the end of the day, it was kind of just like show up to school, brush my hair, throw a bow in my hair. I never ate lunch, but we'll get to that in a minute. And then just, go to crew, go to field hockey, and then go home.
Yeah, that's totally would not have thought that. I mean, I would have thought I just thought you were friendly. You were nice to everyone. You were just someone I wasn't worried about.
Yeah.
You weren't threatening and you weren't chaos. There were people who obviously had problems and wanted everyone to know. And then there were people like you. And I think there were probably a lot more people like you and me. And, I haven't really told my life story on this podcast yet, quite frankly, because I'm not allowed to yet. But as I explained to you, the reason I started this podcast is because that phrase of "please don't tell anyone" kind of was said so much, and when I started when in college, when I started seeing your social media posts and hearing things about what was going on in your life, I realized you had a lot of please don't tell anyone. So I'll tell you the two things I know about you going into this. The two like, oh my God, that girl moments for me. And again, I can cut this if you don't want these two things in there.
Yeah.
When I found out that you had like a very crippling eating disorder.
Yeah.
Shocked. And that your dad was in jail.
Yeah. So the dad in jail actually started before I started high school everyone starts high school in 9th grade. I matriculated into our school, which is K through 12 in 9th grade. So I'd actually gone to Catholic school from kindergarten to 8th grade.
Oh, I didn't know that because I came in 10th.
Yeah.
So I missed that.
And so also I guess the context is prior to knowing this is I went to Catholic school. I don't necessarily agree with everything the Catholic religion preaches, but I consider myself to be fairly religious. We belong to a country club that is primarily Catholic. My world was very Catholic, and I had lived a very sheltered life, and I didn't really know any. I'd never gone to school with anyone who wasn't white, who wasn't Catholic. It was just, it wasn't that I just didn't.
Incredibly sheltered in that
It
world.
was sheltered. It wasn't.
It was a bubble.
It was absolutely a bubble. So I'm the oldest of 4, and when I was in 7th grade, my grandmother from Texas was in town, and my other grandmother was here. She lived locally at the time. She passed away since, but they were over, and my parents were out to dinner, and in the weeks and months prior, things had just been kind of weird. There were a lot of conversations outside on the deck. I knew something was going on. I thought my parents were pregnant, to be honest. I thought they were having another baby. I was so excited.
You were 13. 7th grade, 13.
Yeah, I was 12.
Okay.
7th grade. Yeah, I was young. I was always young for my grade. So I was 12, and then they took me downstairs. And to be honest, I think I kind of just blocked out what they said, but basically they said, your dad did some bad things and he's going to jail. So that was in 7th grade.
Was that completely shocking to you? Like you genuinely had no idea?
Oh, I had completely idolized my father. I thought he was my hero. I mean, I think most people do idolize their father.
Yeah.
I mean, looking back, it all makes sense now. But, I mean, and the problem is my parents handled it completely incorrectly.
Yeah. It's funny how they do that.
It's funny how they do that. And, there was never a please don't tell anyone. The statement was never directly said, but it was an insinuation. So they may as well have just said it.
Yeah.
And, at that point, I had no idea what was going on. And if there's something I can tell you, it's that the federal government is the most inefficient body ever. It takes them ages and ages to do anything. So this was in 7th grade, and I said, okay, but, there was no real, this was what my parents were saying, but, there was no factuality to it. They didn't tell me the circumstances. They didn't tell me why. They didn't tell me what was going on. Things started to progress at a point, but in my head it was like, just go to school, everything's fine. So that was 7th grade, and I also had 3 younger siblings, and they had no idea what was going on. I'm 11 years older than my brother, so I was 12, my brother was like 2. Like, it was crazy. So that was 7th grade. And then what happened was, my father hadn't even been indicted at this point, and my father was kind of co-conspirator in it, and his other partner in crime was from a family that is pretty well known, and so it was known that it was going to be in the papers when it finally did come out when I was in 10th grade. So this was 4 years later.
I don't know why your dad was in jail, and if you don't want to share that, that's okay.
Oh,
I never saw any of this.
It was white collar crime. It was it was just like your run of the villain embezzlement. But and honestly, I'm not going to share names because I feel like it's not my prerogative to say, but the amount of girls from my high school who I know who have also gone through this process, you would be astounded. I mean, you might know a few off the top of your head. Yeah. But and I have reached out to them and conversed with them a little bit, but because it is really such an isolating process, because it sucks, like your dad's going to jail, but it's like you're not really that sympathetic of a victim, because it wasn't like we were poor. It wasn't like we Like, my dad stole money. Like, that's not...
Knowingly.
He defrauded people. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
why is anyone going to feel badly for me? I know I wasn't the one who was doing it, but, you know, I was the one who had to deal with the consequences more so than he did. So where was I going?
10th grade, it hits the papers.
Oh, well, there was a little in between. I mean, there were countless times in between 8th and 9th grade where it was like, he's going to be indicted. He's this, that, and the other. But they always said he was going to be indicted, but he never was. So in my mind, I was like, all right,
it's just not going to happen.
This is never going to happen. And we just were like living our lives, going to the country club, going to school. I mean, the high school we went to is what, $40,000 a year? I'm like, all right, this is all BS. You know what I mean? It's like, okay. Like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought the same thing. It's like you see someone get arrested by a police officer on the street or like those types, like those are crimes. They go to jail. Like there's an ABC usually when you see an arrest, and that wasn't happening here.
And then also to set the scene here a little bit, you have to understand, I did understand that it had something a little bit to do financially from when my father worked at one of the big financial firms. And in 8th grade was when everything hit the fan with Bernie Madoff.
Oh.
So my parents hadn't given me any context. So here I am watching the news and thinking, oh my God, is my father Bernie Madoff, but is this what my father did? Is what's going to happen? And then a year later, Bernie Madoff hung himself. And I'm like, oh my goodness, is this what's happening? And then there was also someone who went to our high school who transferred to public school because her family, and I do have to say my family was very fortunate in the fact that we did have other resources and that this wasn't completely financially devastating, but in this other girl's case, this was financially devastating, and she did have to transfer schools, and she also unfortunately killed herself.
She killed herself?
Yeah, and that was when I was in 9th grade, and she was in 11th grade. So, and then when my father eventually went to jail, I was in 11th grade, so you had to imagine how terrifying that was for me.
Oh my God. I had no clue.
Yeah.
This whole story, I'm just going to have no clue, so expect that a lot.
Yeah, so that was a really hard thing I mean, it wasn't something I was, like, constantly thinking about, but it was something that was constantly in the back of my mind.
I mean, it sounds like it's like this dark cloud on the horizon.
Yeah, and so I also have 3 younger siblings who I love and adore, and my parents had me in college. It was a bit of an accident. So my next sibling is 6 years younger than me, so 6, 8, and 11 years apart. So when all of this was going on, they kind of thought that I could handle. I was the one that they had to worry about the least, which I understand. They thought that more so the younger kids kind of needed more attention.
Oh, I would think the opposite.
So some people would say.
Yeah.
But that was not quite their modality. So here I was in high school. No, not a single person knew what was going on. I was told when I entered our high school to kind of keep a low profile because we never knew when this was going to come off. And
did faculty know? Like, did the teachers know coming in? Or the dean or the...
In 11th grade, there was one teacher, bless her heart, she's since passed away, Mrs. Hoffman, who I was very, very, very close with. She knew, but that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she took on a very maternal presence in my life. But, and without her, I don't know that I could have made it through that year. But, where was I going?
You were talking about, you come into school being told to keep a low profile.
Yeah. So
you kind of did.
I mean, I did, exactly. It was, I mean, I'm not like the most outgoing, most social person ever, but I just personally felt very ashamed that my father had done these things, and I know now after a lot of therapy for the most part that it wasn't my fault. But like, as a young kid, you emulate your parents and you think, and also at the same time I was living off of all of these people's money that he defrauded. I mean, I lived a very affluent and exciting you know what I mean? I lived a very extravagant life, and that was based on his crimes.
Wow. That is a lot to sit it with.
and you feel guilty about it, even though you had no idea, but you still feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was told to kind of keep a low profile. So I wasn't super social and like outgoing to begin with, and then that's kind of why I was friendly with people, but I was always afraid to get close with people because I thought that, you know, who would want to be friends with someone like that?
Wow.
You know, and you never knew when it was going to hit the paper, and you never knew when the other shoe was going to drop. I mean, my father also ended up being, so his whatever you want to call him, my father pled guilty and actually assisted the government in helping prosecute the other guy who did not plead guilty. So there were a lot of like weird things that went on, you know. At points my father was convinced. My father was very paranoid. He thought our house was bugged. He thought people were watching. It was keep your head down as you're walking back from the school bus. I mean, It was just craziness. And he would only have conversations on the deck. It was almost like Tony Soprano. I don't know if you've ever watched The Sopranos.
No, but that sounds like complete paranoia to live in as a kid.
And the problem was also that, like, he knew the parameters of the paranoia, but even now, sometimes if I'm really stressed out, like, I get paranoid to an extent because at the time I didn't know the reasons why there was such paranoia, so I didn't have the reasons to kind of justify it. And I was a child, so my brain wasn't fully developed. So that's kind of embedded in me still.
Yeah,
so that's something
it just wasn't your job to have to deal with all this.
Yeah. So yeah.
So if we're looking right around kind of 9th grade, 10th grade, just to pull in this other mystery about you that I knew that I later found out, had your eating disorder developed then?
No, that was more so 11th, 12th grade when things really kind of started to get bad.
So 10th grade it breaks on the news.
10th grade it breaks on the news. So 10th grade was actually April 12th. My grandfather had passed away the summer beforehand in Texas, but he was from Ohio. So he was cremated and we had a funeral in Texas, but then he actually went to be buried in Ohio with his parents. So as it turned out, the weekend that the news broke, which was a Friday, and it was all over the place. It was on CNN. It was on the front page of CNN. The thing is with things like this, you think everyone pays attention, but
I had no idea. I was not paying attention.
This is something that Mrs. Hoffman always used to say to me. She would say, Morgan, no one really cares. No one really cares, which it sounds bad and callous, but like at the end of the day, it's kind of true.
It's true. Everyone's thinking about themselves.
Like a lot of people really don't care, and that's something you kind of have to learn. But so we were actually driving to Ohio to go bury my dead grandfather. As this is all coming out. So that was April 12th of 2013, which was my sophomore year of high school. And then in July 15th was when he was sentenced. And he was sentenced to a year and a day, which actually the extra day allowed him to get out on extra time. So he actually ended up only going away for 9 months, whereas the other guy went away for 9 years, I think.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was a lot of unknowns.
So the other guy's still away?
No. I mean,
okay.
Jail time's such BS. Like, he got out a few years ago. But,
But your dad ended up going to jail for 9 months?
Yeah. But it was, like, fake jail. It was, like, Martha Stewart jail.
Did you visit him?
I did not visit him.
Okay. What happened with your relationship with your dad between...
I mean, I just things very much went south and still are.
Oh, really?
In the southern direction.
Got it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to push you down that path if you don't want to share that stuff. I'm just curious, like, where you went from idolizing your father to completely cutting off the relationship?
I mean, it just, like, my whole world got turned apart, and it was kind of just... I was kind of just expected to, like, go with the program and think that things were, like, this was normal. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, excuse me? And I think that my parents, like, I don't know that they were malintended in some ways. And there is other stuff that I can't particularly get into on this podcast. But they just, I don't know. They didn't understand why I had such a hard time with it. Which, to me, was so confusing.
So pretty much from 10th grade, you haven't had a relationship with your dad?
Oh, I mean, it was more so like seventh grade. But in 11th grade, 11th grade when he was away was really when I was able to set a boundary and say, I'm not going to see you. I'm not going to communicate with you, this, that, and the other. And it was hard because it created a lot of animosity between me and my mother because my mother was in between my father and I. And then, yeah.
Are they still together?
Well,
I can cut any of this if.
No. That's just
These are just the like next questions, that anyone would have.
Well, they were together until my first freshman year of college. So I graduated from our high school like by the skin of my teeth. Like it was a disaster, and there were a lot of favors given, and
let's then stay back where we were because then we'll get to that.
Where were we?
We were like at 10th grade. So your dad is sentenced in that
year
summer.
and a day.
And then we're entering junior year.
Yeah.
And you set a boundary with your father.
Yeah.
When he goes to jail. But it sounds like based on the timeline that you've given of your eating disorder, this is when mentally you start to
it was like mentally I was a mess. I mean, because I was going to school every day pretending like everything was fine. Meanwhile, I was going home and my father was in jail. My poor mother was dealing with 4 children. We were all pretending like everything was hunky-dory. I mean, it's comical.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was like people knew, but people didn't know. It was just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think also it was me setting a boundary that I was angry at him that I didn't want to go see him in jail. But I never would admit that. I always said I just didn't want to see him in that light, which was also true. But I also think there was a big factor of, like, denial. Like, I just don't think I physically could have handled it.
Did your siblings go?
Yeah, my siblings went.
Oh, wow. All of them?
Yeah. So it was a big fight every Sunday. They would go up to see my father, and I wouldn't go, and there was always a screaming match, and you need to go see your father, you're putting me in an unfair position, this, that, and the other.
And you held your ground with that. That's amazing.
It was amazing until he got home. It was like... It wasn't forever.
So when did he get home?
So he left on September 9th of 2013, and he dropped me off at school, and he said, I'll never forget, he said, catch you later. It was 5. Those great parting words. And then he came home on June 18th. So, and then he was on house arrest for maybe a month or so, and then...
God, I'm just like thinking of where I was sophomore year when this was happening to you. I mean,
this was junior year.
This was junior year that he was in jail.
Yeah.
So your dad drops you off at school.
Catch you later. And then I didn't have any contact with him until June 18th when he got home. And Mrs. Hoffman actually walked me home. Well, like, to go see him. And Mrs. Hoffman offered to go visit him in jail with me. I mean, Mrs. Hoffman was like...
Yeah, she was the best. It was shocking when she died. I'm sure for you it was beyond shocking.
I was not okay.
Yeah. I mean, you just kept getting hit with
I mean, I
missiles.
Just like I don't know. I still have her mask card in my car. Like I don't know what I would have done without that woman.
I mean, I want to believe that she's still with you.
I do too. I just wish she was here.
I know. I hate that too.
It's a little fucked up.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so your dad gets out of jail in June. Mrs. Hoffman walks you home. You see your dad for the first time. How does that go?
I mean, it was kind of just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I walk into my house and my whole family is like sitting on the couch watching Frozen, and my father has his ankle monitor on. I mean, my family like doesn't believe in therapy. It's like this whole fucking disaster. And then junior year, we just like pretended like everything was, fine. We were great. I don't really remember what I did junior year. I don't think much of any like that summer. No. Junior year, I was interning at Penn. I had an internship at a gene therapy lab at Penn, which I think was like good for me because I do really well on structure and like thriving with that kind of stuff. So I did that, and then fast forward to senior year. Oh, also, but the good part about junior year is, like, junior spring, like, I just, like, couldn't keep it up anymore, and I just, like, full on stopped going to school. I don't know if you remember that, but, no. Just, like, couldn't do it anymore. Just stopped.
So what'd you do every day when you stopped going to school?
I would just, like, I was so depressed, and I just, like, couldn't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
It was, like, too much for a kid to have to handle, and I had no help whatsoever, and Mrs. Hoffman tried her hardest, but, like, it was one person trying to be a mother when I needed a mother, a father, a psychiatrist, a therapist, and
Was your mom mad that you weren't going to school? Like, what was her reaction if it wasn't, like, so loving?
I mean, she was mad, but, like, it's so complicated with my mother, because at the same time, she was just trying to get by, too. I mean, she had 4 young kids, and a husband that was in jail, and quite frankly, my father's an asshole. Like, it was just a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
You know?
So, that was junior year.
Yeah.
Have you developed an eating disorder at that point?
By
the way, I don't know much about eating disorders. I don't know the right terminology here, so please correct me. Like, have you developed? I just felt horrible saying that.
Oh, no. I mean, developed, it's not, I don't know if there's a right word or a wrong word. I would say it really blew off when I went to college. So senior year was kind of like damage control. It was like, let's get this girl into a college, first of all. Like, God willing, Connie McAvoy.
Yeah.
You can cut all these names out, but, like, also another saint in heaven. Well, she's still on earth, I do believe.
Yeah, she was on earth the last time I checked.
But, like, also another saint. Everyone was like, just, like, let's get this girl in somewhere. So I did get into college, thankfully. And, looking back, I, like, beat myself up about it because, I mean, honestly, it didn't matter, I guess, because it was going to be a shit show no matter where I went.
Oh, my God. You know what? I'm going to cut this too, probably, just because it's irrelevant. When I met you that summer, all you would talk about is Georgetown.
Yeah.
All you would talk about is Georgetown.
Yeah.
Did you end up applying to Georgetown?
I did. I just didn't get in.
Are you okay sharing where you ended up going the first summer?
I went to Loyola in Maryland, which I actually do really think I would have liked, but my head was in the toilet every day, so I couldn't really, can't really
speak. Literally. Got it.
Literally. So.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, so senior year, let's get this girl into college. They pull it off. They get you into Loyola.
They pull it off. And the problem is, I really think not that Loyola is a bad school, but, like, I really do think I could have gotten into a much better school had I
not been going through so much shit.
Yeah, which annoys me. But whatever.
Because it's like you didn't cause that.
Yeah. So then, I graduate again, barely. Like, there's
from college. Oh no, high school.
High school. Do you remember we had, like, senior whatever?
Oh,
like,
yeah, I remember whatever you were about to say. The sweatshirts, the senior day?
No, like the senior seminars, but they weren't seniors. They were like the 2-week classes at the end of the classes.
Yes, we had the 2-week classes.
Well, I was dumb enough to take the one with Wendy Hill about, like, neurology or whatever, and there was some paper you had to write, and, like, I literally just was like, fuck this, I'm not writing the paper, and they were like, you can't graduate unless you write paper. So, like, literally, I think it was someone, like, it may have been Grella who, like, came over to my house and just, like, wrote the paper with me. It was so bad.
Why didn't Hoffman just be like, guys, what the fuck?
I mean, she did, but, like, I think Hoffman had done it so many times at this point, she was like, Maureen, you
needed to write this paper on bio, whatever.
Neurobiology or whatever.
It's really nice that they did that for you.
Yeah.
Made you do that to graduate after paying $40,000 for 4 years.
I know.
Yeah.
And then, so it was like, all right, amen. Like, here's your diploma. And so then that summer, I, like, didn't really do anything. I just kind of hung out and was like, I think everyone thought just, like, get this chick to college and everything would be fine.
Yeah.
Which is, like, wishful thinking. Yeah. But, like, that's not really how mental illness works.
Yeah.
So I remember, like, going to my pediatrician, who was also another godsend in my life, and I still text her for any medical opinion. I refuse to replace her, even though I got kicked out of her practice because I'm not 22 anymore. But because you, like, age out.
Yeah.
But Susan's the homie.
Okay.
So I remember, like, you know how you have to, like, get all the medical forms, like, to go to, like, college and, like, whatever. And she was like, oh, but wait, I forgot an important part. Senior year, I had to take a medical leave in the spring. Because I'm
like so embarrassed that I didn't know that this was happening. So you take a medical leave senior year.
Yeah, so and they're like, you have to go to see a therapist. And I was like, all right, fuck that. But so I went and saw this therapist like 3 times, so I hated it. And this sounds awful, but she was, you can't send someone with an eating disorder. You didn't cut this out, but she was fat. And you can't send someone with an eating disorder to a fat therapist.
Why do I need to cut that out? I kind of think that that's really funny.
I don't cut it. I don't know. Okay. I don't want to sound like a dick, but like it's true. And so then that happened.
I just feel like someone out there really can relate to that quote.
I mean, everyone with an eating disorder can relate to that quote.
Okay.
It's like you can't do it. It's like that's someone with an eating disorder's worst nightmare, and you're sitting there. It's like, come on.
That's hilarious.
So
it's so funny.
Then, so I took the medical leave, didn't really do anything. It was more so like, if you don't take this medical leave, like, you physically have not been enough days of school to graduate, so, like, you have to take this medical leave.
Yeah.
So I took the medical leave. So then I graduated, so then I'm going to see my pediatrician. She's filling out the paperwork for me to go to college, and she puts disordered eating on my thing. And I said, excuse me, what the fuck is this? Like, what are you talking about? She's like, Morgan, you've lost all this weight. Like, don't tell me you don't have good eating habits. I was like, that's bullshit. Dr. McGarry. I'm fine. Da-da-da-da. She was like, well, it's there. And I was like, okay, whatever. So then I get to college, and it's, you know, I think everyone's a little overwhelmed when I get to college. It's just such a new world and new
I didn't
experience.
think I'd survive.
And, I mean, I wanted to like it, but I think I just had developed such an antisocial is not right. I wasn't antisocial. I was just so afraid to get close to people because I just felt so ashamed of everything that had happened. So then I became best friends with the toilet. So that's really when things kind of took off. And so I just like started throwing up all the time. Like everything that went in my body just went into the toilet.
Can I ask, like, I feel like this is going to be really insensitive, and you don't have to answer this, but like I am just curious, like how does that start? Like, do you see that somewhere, or like how do you decide like today is the day I'm going to do this for the first time?
To be honest, I had tried it before, but like I guess I just hadn't tried hard enough, and I think I was just like feeling so low and like just decided to shove my hand down like a little bit further, and then there we go.
Yeah.
And then I like knew that wasn't great, but like I thought it was just like a little bit of a situation. So then I started seeing this therapist, Esther, in the counseling center, this short like redhead Jewish woman. She was great and
skinny. She was skinnier than the other one.
She was petite, and I was like, all right, I can get down with you, Esther. Like, and she was like, listen, like, this isn't like a short-term problem. Like, you got some issues. And I was like, what are you talking about, Esther? Like, I just like to throw up sometimes. Like, come on. And she was like, no. And so then I made the crucial mistake of giving her Dr. McGarry's phone number. And she was like...
Can I leave these doctor names in or no?
Oh, not Dr. McGarry.
Okay.
You can leave Esther. But okay. Dr. McGarry is like a well-known pediatrician around here.
Can you go back then and say, I made the mistake of giving her my pediatrician's
number? I made the mistake of giving her access to my pediatrician, like the little HIPAA situation.
Oh.
And so when the little HIPAA situation happened, I came home from Thanksgiving and the pediatrician was like, whoa, no. And I was like, whoa, yeah, I'm fine. And she was like, whoa, no. And then she was like, you really like shouldn't go back to school, like, da-da-da. I was like, whoa, no, you're wrong. So, I mean, because at that point I had like a week and finals left. I was like, no. Like,
did your parents know at that point?
Yeah, but she called my parents.
Okay.
And then I went back to school and I had to get an EKG. And
why?
Because when you're vomiting so much, it really fucks up your heart.
Who made you get the EKG, though?
The pediatrician.
Oh, she was like, if you're going to go back to school, you have to get this EKG.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were like, yeah, no. So it was 2 days after my mother's birthday, and she had to come pick me up from school.
Wait, what did the EKG say that was so bad?
That I was like at high risk for sudden cardiac death.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not really small.
So then I took a medical leave from college at that point, and they were like, okay, just like go to rehab for a month or Christmas break or however long you need to, and then come back, finish your finals, whatever. But you need a doctor's approval. So I went home on December 3rd.
At this point, are you still in denial that you have an eating disorder? You're like, oh, I only throw up a few times.
I knew I was sick, but I didn't think I was that sick. And then I went to this, so December 3rd, I came home, and then by December 10th, I was in rehab, which is a really quick turnaround from going from being in college to rehab in a week is like a little bit of a mind fuck.
Yeah.
So then I went to rehab, and that was a bit of an experience. I mean, I have a lot of good stories I could tell. So I was there for a month, and basically I needed the psychiatrist's signature there to go back to school. So I was like a saint of a saint. Like, I ate everything. I did exercise. I followed all the rules. I just need this man's signature to go back to.
How do they make sure you're not throwing up at rehab?
Well, so it's like you're not allowed to like go to the bathroom for like an hour after, but like there are definitely ways around it. Which I definitely found out the second time, but the first time I was on a mission. Okay. I needed to get back to school.
Yeah.
So I went back to. Do you want some of the good rehab stories? There are so good.
Give me one. Whatever's coming to the top of your head.
So there was this girl. Let's call her Lexi. Her name was not Lexi. And she. So when you like get there, they like search your stuff and they like. Whatever. So she goes up to the nurse's station and she says, sorry, I forgot to give my heroin to my mom, and she gives the heroin to her mother. So, and you have to know that we're at an eating disorder treatment facility. This isn't like a drug facility. I mean, and that was my second day there, and I was like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
Everyone's walking around in their blanket like it's like a pashmina. I mean, everyone's like just so depressed. It's Christmas, it's Hanukkah, the menorah doesn't even light up. There's Ensure, which is like a dietary supplement. There's an Ensure can on top of the fake Christmas tree. I mean, it was just like, what is going on? I mean, you just really have no idea. You can't even go for a walk. You're in therapy all day and eating all day, which is quite honestly a person with an eating disorder's worst nightmare.
And everyone's talking about their eating disorder.
Yeah, and then, but like, you can't talk about, you can't say a lot of words because it's considered triggering. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, and it's Christmas, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? So, and then I celebrated New Year's there as well, and that probably should have been a little foreshadowing that the year to come wasn't going to be so great either. But, you know, we were trying to be optimistic.
Yeah.
Didn't make it up to midnight because, believe it or not, being in rehab is quite exhausting. And then, so I was let out of rehab on January 10th, which was a Sunday. Mm-hmm. And then, so I got the fancy little psychiatrist signature to go back to school, which that's all I wanted. I just wanted to go back to school. I didn't really want the help. It wasn't that I didn't want the help. I just wanted my life to be normal. Mm-hmm. I just wanted things to go back to normal. I just wanted to be okay. And I didn't really see a problem with shoving my hand in my throat. I just... it was like fine. It was like the medical consequences were the problem. Yeah. So then with eating disorder rehab, there's like 3 levels. Well, with rehab, there's like, well, technically it's called residential treatment center, mm-hmm. but everyone calls it rehab because that's So there's what's called inpatient, which is like a psychiatric unit, or like medical stabilization, and then there's rehab, which is where I was that time, and then there's what's called partial program, which is like you go basically to a center from like 9 to 2, so you're there for most of the day,
like a day program,
and then there's an intensive outpatient program, which is like 3 nights a week, and you eat dinner there, and it's like group therapy and all of that. So the plan was I left the residential program. I went to partial program for a week before I went back to college. So I went to partial for a week, and like again was just like Sally, well behaved, like whatever. Then I moved back into school. I think it was like January 18th or whatever, and at this point I was doing the place I went, it was called Renfrew. And they have a bunch of like treatment centers. Like they only have 2 residential treatment centers, but they have a ton of like IOP and partial programs throughout the country. And so they had one in Baltimore. So I was doing, I went back to school, and so had to make up all of my incompletes from the previous semester, was taking 18 more credits this coming semester, and was doing inpatient or IOP at Baltimore. And then I was supposed to find a therapist that I liked there too, but like I just never got around to that. And then
totally unsustainable, totally and unmanageable.
But then that's January 18th. January 20th, my mother leaves my father.
Oh, copy that. Did you see that coming?
So my mother had said, my parents like never really, I don't know. My parents were never really match made in heaven, in my opinion. But did I see that coming?
Did you see that coming then? Like that January where like, oh, I know she's about to file, or I know she's about to leave
Well, she said she was, but she's been saying this for years. So it was kind of like...
Were they living together?
Yeah, it was kind of like Dad was going to jail, but Dad wasn't going to jail. Like my mom was like,
I'll believe it when I see it.
I'll believe it when I see it. January 20th, so like 10 days fresh out of rehab.
Yeah.
Like in a different state. Like, what
How do you find out?
And then my mom did it also in like the most inconvenient... My mom like showed up to my dad's house like with a moving truck while he was in the shower and just like essentially tried to take all of his stuff. And listen, I'm not either of my parents' biggest fans, but like the way they did it was like so fucked up. And then the police got called. It was a shit show.
But you weren't there.
I was in Baltimore.
Great.
No, it was like I felt like I could have been more helpful if I was there, which in reality there was no winning or losing. It was just losing.
Yeah.
So then that happened. So then I just was like trying to make up all of these incompletes, going to IOP 3 days a week. Still had my head in the toilet. Was trying to go to class, wasn't really going to class. And then I came home on spring break and my pediatrician again was like, yo, what the fuck? And I was like, it's fine, Susan, don't worry about it. And she was like, no. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And she was like, no. And so I'll never forget that Sunday I went to the flower show with my father. We went to brunch in the flower show. We were like pretending like things were fine. We do that sometimes, in the sake of camaraderie. Mm-hmm. So we went to the flower show. We went to brunch at this place around here called Z. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, I like went, like puked everything I just ate, and then we went to the flower show. And then that was on Sunday. And then I was like, Dr. McGarvey was like, my pediatrician was like, you cannot go back to school. I was like, fine. Like, I'll go back to seeing a therapist. Because right before spring break, I had discharged myself from the IOP program because I was like, screw this, I'm over it. Like,
got it.
And I was like, fine. Like, I'll go see a therapist. And she was like, kiddo, we're way past that. I was like,
how could she tell that you were way past that? Like, were you being honest with her about
no, it's just like I was losing a lot of weight, and then also like your blood work like
shows it
when you're throwing up so much. Like your levels are like my potassium levels were shot, my vitamin D levels were shot, my iron was shot, my EKG was a mess. I mean, the body doesn't lie, unfortunately. Yeah. So then I was like, okay, fine, like I'll go like see a therapist in Baltimore. And she was like, no, like you're not going back to Baltimore, like you're going to CHOP. And I was like, no. And she was like, literally, like, you're gonna die. And I was like, no, what are you talking about? And she was like, no, like, and I was definitely thinner than I had been, but I wasn't like, didn't look thin. So I was like, no, like I don't have a problem, like I'm fine. And she was like, no. So basically she won and I lost. So then...
Were your parents like, yeah, take her to CHOP? Or were they like, what the fuck? Or like, why?
Well, my father was like, what the fuck? Like, we just went to brunch in the flower show.
The flower show.
Like,
she's
fine. My mother was like, still... I mean, they were just like... And when they, like, first... They're actually not officially divorced still for monetary reasons. They refuse to divide the assets. So they're legally separated, and they go through periods of speaking and not speaking. And it just came out a few weeks ago that my father had a 4-year affair on my mother, and that's a whole other thing.
Oh, copy that. Wow.
While my mom was pregnant.
Oh, back in the day.
Back in the day.
Got it. 4 years, that's a long affair.
Yeah, with my aunt's best friend.
Oh, is she still in the picture? The aunt's best friend?
No.
But you knew her?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like someone's got to come on the podcast from that story.
Yeah, so, so I went to CHOP, and CHOP was, like, honestly, I don't even remember CHOP wasn't, like, a psychiatric unit. CHOP was, like...
Stabilize her.
CHOP was, like, I had a heart monitor on, and the parameters so, just to give a little medical background here, typically someone's heart rate is from 60 to 100 beats per minute.
Mm-hmm.
Resting. So, my resting heart rate when I admitted was 34 beats per minute.
Wow.
And and that falls when you're sleeping, obviously, a little bit. So the parameters to get out of CHOP were my heart rate had to be above 45 beats per minute for 3 nights in a row. So it took me 10 days to do that.
Before you got to CHOP, when you were, like, going about your life, did you feel like you were about to pass out all the time?
You kind of get used to it in a weird way. You know what I mean?
It just, like, becomes a norm. Of, like, oh, this is what it feels like to be alive.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
It's not really, like, you kind of just get used to it. And, okay. I mean, there were definitely times I'm like, oh, I'm a little dizzy here.
Yeah, but you never actually passed out.
No. And then, so, when I left CHOP, they were like, they have this program called family-based treatment where basically your parents, like, control everything you do. Mm-hmm. And I actually don't know a lot about it, but it has been shown to be pretty effective in some cases.
This was not one of those cases.
Well, I was like, fuck no, absolutely not. So I went back to Renfrew where I was the first time and was a little less of an angel.
Where is that place that you went to?
Renfrew?
Yeah.
It's probably about 20 minutes away
from
here.
It's around here.
Yeah. Okay. The residential place. And then the outpatient place, they have one in Radnor, they have one in the city.
Yeah.
They have a bunch.
Baltimore, yeah.
Anyway, so
you go back the second time to the same place.
Yeah, and I was like, fuck this. Like, I don't give a shit. So it took a lot longer for me to get out because I wasn't really behaving. I think I was there for 8 weeks the second time.
At this point, had you dropped out of college?
I hadn't dropped out. I mean, I took a medical leave the first time and then never, like, remade the medical leave, if that makes sense. And then, like, completed it, and then I took another medical leave. And then that was that. So then I got out. It was, like, May. And I remember meeting with Connie McAvoy, and I was like, what do I do?
She, for reference, that's our college counselor in high school. I think it's fine to use her name. I mean, I don't think she would.
I don't think she listens.
No. Burn. Connie, if you're listening, we love you. Thanks for all the help.
Connie, you're a saint, honestly. Well, funny enough, I met with Connie because Loyola, where I was, just, like, I had a bad taste in my mouth from, like, the toilet. Yeah. So I wanted to transfer anyway, so I met with Connie right before I got admitted to CHOP the second time because when my parents first separated, I was coming home, like, every weekend because I just, like, didn't know what else to do. Yeah. Which also, like, didn't really lend well to me having, like, a normal college life because I was never there. Yeah. But, like, I didn't know what else to do, and I felt responsible.
So you meet with Connie.
I met with Connie, and she was, like, trying to help me transfer, and then she was, like, send me this essay by this date, and then I remember being at CHOP and sending her this email and being like, well, actually, in a little bit of a turn of events, I'm actually in the hospital, so we're going to have to put things on hold for a little while. So that was an interesting email.
So you're out in May, summer.
Yeah, and, you know, one of the angels in heaven, Joanne Hoffman, she came to visit me in rehab, and I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a Diet Coke addict. And that's nothing to do with my eating disorder. I always have been. And bless her heart, she snuck me in a Diet Coke to rehab.
That's really sweet.
Also, Grillo came to visit me in rehab. I mean, I had quite the Irwin's crew at rehab. So then I got out, and everyone's like, all right, what are we supposed to do with this girl? I was supposed to go to partial, and I went for, like, a week. But at that point, I was like, I am rehabbed out. Like, I can't do it anymore. Which probably wasn't the best idea to go from, like, full rehab to, like, cold turkey, but, like, I was just so done with it. So no one really knew what to do with me, and then it was, like, late July at this point. I was like, oh, shit, like, I guess I have to go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
So the only place around, and I wanted to stay local because I just felt like it was, like, easier to stay local, and the only place that was really accepting applications was LaSalle, and, like, LaSalle wasn't really a me school, but I was like, all right, whatever, I guess I'll do it. So I went there for a few semesters, but then what happened was during finals one semester, I fell. This was, like, completely unrelated to my eating disorder. Got a really bad concussion, couldn't take any of my finals, and it turned into this whole thing where, like, they were trying to fail me for the semester because I sent a doctor's note, but it didn't say, like, why I couldn't take my finals, and it became this whole, like, legal litigation. So then yeah. So then I ended up transferring again, actually, to Rosemont College because...
This is what, junior year of college?
I'm trying to think about how many years I did at Rosemont. Was that...
Let me ask you this. Miss Hoffman dies.
Yeah.
That summer. That was my sophomore year summer, going into junior year.
Yeah.
Where were you going to school then?
I was at LaSalle at that point.
Yeah.
But then I think it was that fall was the concussion. So I lost that semester too. I didn't get any credit for that semester.
Okay.
So then I transferred to Rosemont from, like, a family connection. And then I ended up loving Rosemont. And,
that's great.
Yeah. So that was that.
And you graduated from Rosemont.
Yeah.
We both graduated college in 2019. It's now 2022. So.
Oh, I graduated college in 2021.
Oh, okay, great. We both graduated college at different times. I graduated in 2019. You graduated 2021. It's 2022.
Yeah.
Where are we between 2021 and 2022? Where?
I work at a local hospital doing research.
How are you though? Mentally, physically, emotionally?
Mentally, I'm in therapy twice a week still.
Great. No, I mean you weren't at that point in the story. So.
Physically, I also have an autoimmune disorder, rheumatoid arthritis. So that's been a little tricky with the pandemic because I'm considered, like, immunocompromised and, like, high risk. So that's really been fun. Yeah.
I mean, the question on the top of my head, which you don't have to answer, and I can take this out, but, like, are you in recovery? Or how does that work? Like, I know with drugs.
Yeah, well, so that's the problem with, like...
It's not like sobriety.
It's not so cut and dry, you know what I mean?
It's an ongoing battle.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It's not such a straight line.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm a lot better than I used to be, but there are some hard days sometimes.
Yeah, and you're not in contact with your dad?
I mean, I have 3 younger siblings who are in contact with him. So, I mean, he's around. We just, like, pretend like none of this ever happened and just whack a smile on our face, put a cocktail in our hand, and call it a day.
That's really painful. And you're living with your mom?
Yeah.
And your siblings, or just you and your mom?
My one sister is in college, and then my 2 younger ones go back and forth.
And I don't know why this question's coming to mind through the story, and I kind of hate that I have this question. Do you have a love life through any of this? Like, are you dating during all this pain? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I do. That's, like, a whole different...
Okay, we don't have to go into that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share?
Any other questions you have?
I mean, it's interesting because, like, I honestly don't know. I feel like I'm going to fuck up asking questions here. Like, I feel like I'm going to get ripped apart by the eating disorder.
Ask away. Go ahead. I will. I got you.
Well, I think the fear is that, like, you'll trigger someone, you know?
So the thing I have with this is, like, and I think that this is just, like, not just in the eating disorder world. I think it's, like, in the world itself. It's, like, the problem with also residential treatment is, like, yes, it's really helpful in the fact that it stops you in your track and you're literally being monitored 24 hours a day and, like, you can't really pull shit because you're literally being watched. But, like, that's not the real world. It stops patterns, but like realistically, that's not long term.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with like the political climate that we have these days. And I don't do I'm not going to get into politics at all, but like people will say, "Oh, that's so triggering." Well, you have to have a conversation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There has to be some sort of a healthy medium about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, go ahead and ask me whatever you want.
Honestly, I don't. I think I'll probably start the podcast with what you just said, because I think like that is the fear in having a conversation about an eating disorder, is that you're gonna trigger someone's eating disorder,
which is like kind of a them problem. Not that it's not a me problem, but like,
but that's the narrative. Like, as you even just said, talking about people that you were at treatment with, you're not supposed to talk about certain things because you could trigger other people.
Like, you weren't allowed to say the word restrict, you weren't allowed to say the word binge, you weren't allowed to say the word purge, which like those are literally the 3 things of an eating disorder. So it's, you know what I mean? You're always supposed to say using your symptoms.
So interesting.
Because, yes, at the end of the day, eating disorders present very differently, and they do affect all sorts of people. But I think the root of most eating disorders is that the person is in some sort of kind of pain, which is the same thing with addiction or alcoholism or suicidality, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so you're turning 25. Does it feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel, or does it feel like more like stability? I mean, the answer to that can be no, but it does seem in some way like you've gone through a ton of shit. I feel like you can take on.
I mean, there's like more shit that I like can't really get into right now. That I'd like get in with you, but like not publicly. But
then let's just end the that's fine. I mean, you just told us the story of your life, and I'm so sorry that it has been that painful, and I'm angry listening to it, because it's like you didn't cause all of this for yourself. You know, it was a series of unfortunate events that you were in around you. And that's a really tricky thing about like looking at our parents, right? It's like they weren't given the tools by their parents or, you know, by their situation to do better in certain regards. I mean, I don't know if that's the case for you, but
yeah. I mean, my parents had me at 21, which is difficult because I don't know. It's like,
I mean, that seems self-explanatory in itself. I can't imagine having a kid at 21.
I can't imagine having a kid at 21, and like I said, I'm Catholic. However, there are do you know what I mean? That's why I grew up very Catholic. I mean, don't put this in the podcast, but like I grew up very Catholic, and like that was like never the answer. But the more I've like grown up and gotten older, like sometimes that is the answer. Like sometimes people just should not be parents. And it's like crazy to see what's going on right now. And like, oh,
I mean, I am off the podcast interested in other aspects of where you stand on things. But okay, the last question I'm going to ask you. I'm trying to be better about this and ask everyone. So you live in Philadelphia / the main line. Can you give us your favorite restaurant if someone's coming here to visit? Now I feel like, oh, fuck, I'm asking someone with an eating disorder their favorite restaurant.
You know, the Refractory is actually, it's pretty good.
What's that?
The Refractory. It's right.
Never heard of it.
It's on Villanova's campus. It's a little weird vibe because it's literally in Villanova's campus. Yeah. But the main line doesn't have like a ton of good restaurants. I mean, White Dog, like
no, I think everything's bad at this point.
You can only White Dog so much.
Okay, what's at the Refractory? Like, what would you say someone should get there?
Well, they just make a really good margarita. So.
Okay, great. Margarita at the Refractory. Near Villanova's campus. Thank you so much for doing this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Are you sure you don't have any more questions?